Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Along with Sword Young Master revealing his shocking strength, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was known by the people present. After all, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was only one of the numerous imperial kingdoms under the Darkstone Empire. Many people of the Darkstone Empire had even never heard of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom before today. Ranked number 4 in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 5 Great Young Masters. Now, many people were slightly anticipating it. They were anticipating the person ranked in the top 3 of Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 5 Great Young Masters to enter the ring. Wei Kuan and the other representative from Bazo Imperial Kingdom that sat on the high platform had extremely unsightly expressions. Especially Wei Kuan. He was being complacent in front of Qi Ming earlier, and in this short moment of time, he'd slapped his own face. This caused him to be unable to help from feeling humiliated to the extreme. Revered Elder Wei, it was a good fight. Qi Ming looked at Wei Kuan, who had an unsightly expression and spoke via voice transmission, and his tone had no lack of taking pleasure for Wei Kuan's misfortune. Wei Kuan's figure trembled slightly as his eyes flickered with ghastly and cold, killing intent. His gaze quickly descended onto the remaining 4 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom, and then onto the young man around the age of 35. Changxian, go up and kill him. The person Wei Kuan called out to was the strongest person of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom's young geniuses. All of the 4 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom, including Changxian, felt extremely embarrassed the instant they saw their companion being killed. Now, when Changxian heard Wei Kuan's voice transmission, his eyes revealed frightful cold lights as he nodded lightly. Whoosh! Changxian's figure flashed out to stand onto the combat ring and stand in confrontation with Chun Xiao Shuai. Sword Young Master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Today, I, Changxian, the number 1 of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom's younger generation, will fight you. Changxian spoke in a low voice. His pair of icy cold eyes stared fixedly at Chun Xiao Shuai. He was looking for an opportunity that would make Chun Xiao Shuai not be on guard and allow him to kill Chun Xiao Shuai in one go. Sword Young Master. Outside the combat ring, Duan Ling Tian withdrew his spiritual force that swept onto Changxian, and then he frowned as he sent a voice transmission into Chun Xiao Shuai's ears. He's a 7th level void prying stage martial artist. 7th level of the void prying stage? Chun Xiao Shuai's pupils constricted abruptly when he heard this. When Changxian dared come out at this moment, he knew that Changxian's strength was stronger by that person he'd just killed. But he never expected that this Changxian was actually a 7th level void prying stage martial artist. Duan Ling Tian, how do you know? Chun Xiao Shuai was shocked. Don't ask so many questions now. Hurry up and admit defeat. When Duan Ling Tian saw the origin energy on Changxian's body start to pulsate, his face went slightly grim as he urged Chun Xiao Shuai via voice transmission. I admit defeat. Chun Xiao Shuai perceived the urgency in Duan Ling Tian's words, and he didn't dare hesitate to hurriedly admit defeat in a loud voice. Admit defeat? This scene caused everyone present to be astounded. They were originally anticipating a fierce struggle, yet they never expected that it would end like this. You actually admitted defeat. Changxian looked at Chun Xiao Shuai with a gloomy expression, and the origin energy on his body gradually started rising. You're at the 7th level of the void prying stage, and you ought to possess a grade 5 spirit sword as well. Even if you haven't comprehended advanced force, I'm still not a match for you. Chun Xiao Shuai smiled as he left the combat ring in a natural and poised manner. The expression of Changxian, who remained on the combat ring, changed to an expression of shock. You? How did you know? The instant Changxian's expression turned to shock, the origin energy on his body surged to the extreme. Whoosh! In the sky above him, a lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form. He's really at the 7th level of the void prying stage. Many people exclaimed in shock. Damn it! On the high platform, Wei Kuan's expression was unsightly to the extreme. How did this Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Sword Young Master know Changxian's cultivation? Qi Ming instead started laughing, and he laughed extremely brilliantly. Duan Ling Tian, thank you. After he left the combat ring, Chen Xiaoshui stood by Duan Ling Tian's side, and he felt a slight lingering fear in his heart as he looked at the ancient horned dragon silhouette over Chang Xian's head. When did you become so courteous? Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled as he replied via voice transmission. If it wasn't for your warning and I wasn't prepared, it would be difficult for me to escape death. Chen Xiaoshui had a serious expression. Sword young master, how did you know he's a 7th level void prying stage martial artist? Luo Zhan looked at Chen Xiaoshui and asked curiously. Chen Xiaoshui shrugged and smiled, yet said no more. Luo Zhan thought that Chen Xiaoshui had something that made him unable to disclose the answer, so Luo Zhan didn't continue asking. Perhaps Luo Zhan had never imagined that it was utterly not Chen Xiaoshui who discerned Chang Xian's cultivation earlier. Duan Ling Tian, how did you do it? Chen Xiaoshui asked Duan Ling Tian via voice transmission. It's a secret. Duan Ling Tian glanced deeply at Chen Xiaoshui, and he received an eye roll from Chen Xiaoshui in return. But Chen Xiaoshui perceived that Duan Ling Tian didn't want to speak of it, so he didn't continue asking to get to the bottom of it. Do the members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom only know how to run away in the face of battle? You don't even have the courage to have a battle with me, Chang Xian? Pitiable. Suddenly, an irritating voice of ridicule sounded out. The expressions of Duan Ling Tian and the others became gloomy, and they glared angrily at Chang Xian, who was on the combat ring. What are all of you glaring at? Could it be that I said something wrong? Does anyone from your Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom dare fight me? Chang Xian ridiculed. The members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom are trash, as expected. Exactly, a group of trash. The other 3 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom added fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tian's group had become the center of attraction for everyone present, and it was even to the point that no one watched the battles on the other 8 combat rings. Humph. Right at this moment, a cold grunt suddenly sounded out. Subsequently, a swift figure flashed out like the wind and flew onto the combat ring in the blink of an eye to stand in confrontation with Chang Xian. Long Yun. Duan Ling Tian was originally already intending to ascend to the combat ring and crush the airs Chang Xian was putting on. Yet he never expected that Saber Young Master, Long Yun, would be a step ahead of him. Is Saber Young Master a match for him? Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui were both slightly worried. Don't worry. Duan Ling Tian and Su Li practically spoke at the same time, and it was as if their hearts were linked. Subsequently, the 2 of them looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. When they saw that Duan Ling Tian and Su Li were so confident of Long Yun, Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui both heaved a sigh of relief. Although they couldn't be considered to be familiar with Long Yun was representing the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom now, and he shared weal or woe with them. They naturally hoped that Long Yun was able to win. Looks like there really isn't anyone talented in your Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Your age seems to be even younger than Sword Young Master, right? Chang Xian looked at Long Yun and said in disdain, Chang Xian, don't kill nameless people. Who are you? Speak your name. One of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that all of you look down upon, Saber Young Master. Long Yun's tone was calm and didn't contain any feelings. Saber Young Master. As soon as Long Yun finished speaking, it caused another wave of shocked exclaims to rise. Saber Young Master? Looks like he's another one of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 5 great young masters. I wonder what's this Saber Young Master's rank amongst the 5 great young master. Many people wondered. I've heard of Saber Young Master. This Saber Young Master is the person that's ranked last amongst the 5 great young masters. Some people that knew about it spoke out. What? The person that's ranked last? Is there really no one talented in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Instantly, many people were dumbstruck. Saber Young Master? Courting death. On the high platform, Wei Kuan revealed a frenzied smile. As far as he was concerned, a figure that was ranked last amongst the 5 great young masters would have a strength that was even inferior to Sword Young Master. Yet he'd actually dared to ascend to the ring? It was simply courting death. But when he saw Qi Ming sitting over there with a calm expression, his heart couldn't help but jerk as a bad premonition arose in his heart. Chang. Right when he intended to stop Chang Xian, he noticed that Chang Xian had already made a move. Saber Young Master? The last amongst the 5 great young masters. At the same time that Chang Xian laughed in ridicule, his figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning that shot out. If you are reborn, properly remember not to forcefully stand out. Chang Xian's words had obviously taken Long Yun to be a dead man. Whem! Chang Xian's body flashed out, and a spirit saber that was thin as a cicada's wings appeared out of thin air in his hand. Origin energy suffused onto the spirit saber before it tore through the sky and swept towards Long Yun. In the sky, another 4,800 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form at the side of the ancient horned dragon silhouette. Obviously, it was a grade 5 spirit saber in Chang Xian's hand. Hiss! Along with the origin energy leaping about on the spirit saber in Chang Xian's hand, strands of fiery red-colored energy gradually condensed into form. Instantly, the spirit saber in Chang Xian's hand transformed into a flaming saber that slashed towards Long Yun, and another 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. Advanced Fire Force. An ancient horned dragon silhouette took the lead, and it dragged along another 6,800 ancient mammoth silhouettes behind it as all of them charged towards Long Yun together. Advanced Fire Force. Luo Zhan and Chun Xiao Shuai's faces became grim, as they never expected that Chang Xian had actually comprehended Advanced Fire Force. For a time, they broke out in cold sweat for Long Yun, whereas on the high platform, a serious expression appeared on Qi Ming's face as well. As for Wei Kuan, when he noticed Qi Ming's serious expression, he instead started laughing, and his gaze once again returned onto the combat ring. He seemed as if he'd already seen the scene of Long Yun being killed by Chang Xian. At that time, he would be able to feel proud and flaunt before his old rival, Qi Ming. Not bad. At this moment, even King Yong couldn't refrain from speaking, and he nodded in praise. This caused Wei Kuan to be even more delighted, and it was as if he'd taken some stimulants. Do you think that only you've comprehended Advanced Force? Right when most people thought that Long Yun would be killed by Chang Xian, Long Yun had finally made a move. Whem! The origin energy on Long Yun's body skyrocketed as a spirit saber swept out from his hand, and the swift saber was accompanied by origin energy and saber force as it condensed into a demonic lotus that moved to intercept the flame sword in Chang Xian's hand. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out. The demonic lotus that the spirit saber in Long Yun's hand had transformed into had easily destroyed the flame saber. A miserable shrill cry resounded in the surroundings, and it caused most people to be unable to help but feel a chill run down their spines. In next to no time, the shrill cry stopped abruptly. Bang! Under the gazes of everyone present, Chang Xian fell to the ground. Eighth level of the Void Prying Stage. On the Jade platform, one of the representatives looked at the ancient horned dragon and ancient mammoth silhouettes in the sky above Long Yun and exclaimed in shock. For a time, Long Yun, who was in the combat ring, had become the absolute center of attention. Long Yun, Saber Young Master, the person that was ranked at the last amongst the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. He'd relied on his cultivation at the 8th level of the Void Prying Stage, Advanced Saber Force, and a grade 5 Spirit Saber to instantly kill the number 1 young genius in the younger generation of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom with a single saber strike. No, impossible. On the Jade platform, Wei Kuan and the other representative stood up. Both of them stared blankly at Long Yun on the combat ring, and they were unwilling to believe that all this was true. Amongst the 5 young geniuses that had come from their Bazo Imperial Kingdom this time, Chang Xian was undoubtedly the strongest. His cultivation was at the 7th level of the Void Prying Stage, had comprehended Advanced Fire Force, and he even possessed a grade 5 Spirit Saber to rely on. However, even then, he was still killed. Most importantly, Chang Xian was killed by the members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. This caused it to be difficult for him to endure it in his heart. Because of a rare mineral vein at the common border between their Bazo Imperial Kingdom and the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, they had already been at odds with the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom since long ago. It was even to the extent that every 20 years, The two imperial kingdoms would hold a martial competition amongst the young geniuses of the two imperial kingdoms. The winner of the competition would obtain the rights to mine the mineral vein. For many years, it had always been the Bazo Imperial Kingdom that obtained the rights. So in the eyes of the members of Bazo Imperial Kingdom, the members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had always been trampled by them beneath their feet. Today, a young genius of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had killed the number one young genius of their Bazo Imperial Kingdom with a single sword strike, and it caused him to be slightly unable to accept it. How could this be possible? Chang Xian was killed by a single saber strike. 8th level of the Void Prying Stage. An 8th level Void Prying Stage martial artist has actually been born in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The three remaining young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom had extremely unsightly expressions. When they looked at Long Yun, who was in the combat ring, their eyes were filled with terror. Advanced Saber Force. Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed as he focused his gaze onto Long Yun, and waves of shock surged in his heart. Although he was mentally prepared since long ago, he still couldn't help but feel shocked. Besides that, he used a grade 5 Spirit Saber this time. Looks like he hit his strength during the Young Genius competition in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom a year ago. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. He still remembered that the Spirit Saber Long Yun used that day was only a grade 6 Spirit Saber. Looks like we've already been thrown off far behind by Long Yun. Luo Zhan looked at Chun Xiao Shuai with a bitter smile on his face. Crazy young master, has your fire force broken through to the advanced stage? Chun Xiao Shuai asked. Not yet. Luo Zhan shook his head and sighed. Presently, amongst all of us, I have instead become the person at the bottom. Luo Zhan's tone was filled with a sigh. He, crazy young master, was the person ranked at the lead amongst the 5 great young masters that were widely known in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. But now, his strength had already been surpassed by Chun Xiao Shuai and Long Yun, who were ranked at the end amongst the 5 great young masters, and this caused him to feel extremely uncomfortable in his heart. All of you 3, come up the ring together. Long Yun stood on the combat ring with his saber laying horizontally before him, and his fierce gaze shot onto the remaining 3 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom as he spoke indifferently. 3 against 1. Instantly, the surroundings burst into an uproar. This Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's saber young master is so arrogant. He's arrogant because he has the qualifications to be arrogant. If it was another person, I'm afraid they wouldn't even be able to defeat that Bazo Imperial Kingdom's Chang Xian. TSK. These 3 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom have all gone pale. Looks like they don't dare ascend to the combat ring. Didn't you hear what Chang Xian, who was killed by Saber Young Master, said earlier? Chang Xian was the number 1 genius in the younger generation of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom. Even the number 1 genius was killed, and you're still counting on them. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. These words entered into the ears of the 3 young men from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. It caused them to tremble as if struck by lightning, and their expressions were extremely unsightly. But when faced with Long Yun's challenge, they had instead tacitly chosen to not take action at all. Their legs seemed as if they were filled with lead, and it was difficult for them to move a single step. If someone were to carefully observe them, the person would surely be able to notice that the bodies of those 3 were shivering at this moment. What a joke. Even Chang Xian was killed, so wouldn't they be looking for a beating if they ascended to the ring? All 3 of them were only martial artists at the 6th level of the Void Prying Stage, and they'd only comprehended half-step advanced force. Although all of them had grade 5 spirit weapons to rely on, they felt that even if they joined forces, it would be impossible for them to be a match for Long Yun. Trash. Long Yun grunted coldly and spoke in disdain. Wei Kuan. Looks like the members of your Bazo Imperial Kingdom are only a group of cowards. They don't even dare to fight a battle that's 3 of them against 1 enemy. On the Jade platform, Qi Ming looked at Wei Kuan, and his voice transmission was filled with complacency. Wei Kuan's face sank, yet he had nothing to say in reply. This time, their Bazo Imperial Kingdom had lost face extremely greatly. All 3 of you ascend a different combat ring later, and try your best to provoke those two people from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that are the youngest. As for that person with the slightly older age, don't go offend him." Wei Kuan's voice transmission entered into the ears of the remaining three young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom. In the next moment, Duan Ling Tian was chatting idly with Su Li when he suddenly felt three burning gazes lock onto him and Su Li, and he couldn't help but be stunned. Duan Ling Tian, looks like the members of Bazo Imperial Kingdom have taken us to be ripe persimmons that are easy to squash, said Su Li with a smile. That will depend on if they have the ability to squash us. Duan Ling Tian started smiling as well. Since the trash of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom don't dare to ascend to the ring, then is there anyone else that will come battle me, Long Yun? Long Yun's voice was like a large bell as it sounded out. Allow me. Right at this moment, a figure that was like the wind flashed out to ascend the combat ring. This was a young man around the age of 35, his face as beautiful as a jade ornament, his eyes like an array of stars, and as he stood there, he revealed a graceful bearing. The young man wore a scholar's robes, and he held a fan in his hand. This fan was no ordinary fan, and it only had the framework of the fan, but no actual fan covering. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Duan Ling Tian's brows raised when he discerned the grade of the fan in the young man's hand. Darkstone Empire's Imperial City's Gao clan, Gao Yuhai. The young man dressed in a scholar's attire looked at Long Yun and lightly smiled. Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Long Yun. Long Yun replied indifferently. Please. Gao Yuhai had an elegant bearing, and even when he was facing Long Yun in battle, he still revealed his bearing. It's young Master Yuhai. Young Master Yuhai is so handsome. Young Master Yuhai, I love you. The surrounding crowd of people resounded with waves of sharp cries. The owners of these voices were all women, and there was even no lack of some widows. This Gao Yuhai's appearance is really fake. Chen Xiao Shui grunted. Sword Young Master, why do I feel your words are slightly sour? Luo Zhan smiled. Sword Young Master is probably jealous of him. Duan Ling Tian pierced the truth with a single remark. I'm jealous of him. Chen Xiao Shui rolled his eyes at Duan Ling Tian. I can't be bothered to pay attention to you. In the combat ring. Whoosh. Long Yun chose to strike first and gain the advantage. His body flashed out, and he seemed to have transformed into a fierce tiger that pounced towards Gao Yuhai. Gao Yuhai dared to enter the ring, and it was undoubtedly because he was extremely confident of his own strength. So Long Yun didn't dare be careless. Demonic Lotus Blade Technique. The origin energy on the Grade 5 Spirit Saber in Long Yun's hands first skyrocketed, then converged to transform into a demonic lotus that was like a fierce tiger's open, bloody mouth that bit towards Gao Yuhai. Long Yun had utilized his full strength in the first move. His origin energy at the 8th level of the Void Prying stage had exploded out completely. The amplification of the Grade 5 Spirit Saber was completely revealed, and his advanced saber force blasted out. In the sky above him, an ancient horned dragon silhouette was escorted by over 8,200 ancient mammoth silhouettes as it flew out with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. On the other side, the smile on Gao Yuhai's face had been completely restrained as well. Whoosh. In the next moment, Gao Yuhai made his move. He actually chose to move up to intercept Long Yun, and the origin energy on the fan in his hand rose sharply and was mixed with strands of fierce aura as the fan swept towards the demonic lotus that moved over with Long Yun. In the sky, an ancient horned dragon silhouette and over 8,200 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared as well. Advanced Saber Force. Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised that Gao Yuhai revealed a cultivation at the 8th level of the Void Prying stage. What caused Duan Ling Tian to be surprised was the force that Gao Yuhai revealed. It was actually Advanced Saber Force. Gao Yuhai's Saber Force had flawlessly fused into the fan in his hand as it swept out, and it seemed to have transformed into a crescent that collided with the demonic lotus. Clang. The sound of weapons colliding sounded out abruptly, and it was incomparably jarring to the ear. Amongst the crowd of spectators, some of them with comparatively lower cultivations felt a piercing pain in their eardrums, and their faces flushed red as their bodies trembled. Bang! The boundless origin energy and saber forces fiercely collided together. Instantly, the air seemed as if it was completely sucked out. Vast amounts of airflow swept out with the point of collision as its center, and it seemed to have transformed into circle after circle of ripples that gave rise to waves of violent winds. The clothes worn by the people present were successively blown up, yet it didn't draw the attention of others in the slightest. The gazes of everyone had descended onto the combat ring, and they were all curious about the outcome of the battle. In the combat ring, the two people that collided together had separated right after the collision. Long Yun had moved back 2 steps, whereas Gao Yuhai had instead taken 5 steps back. On Long Yun's body, strands of faint saber energy could be vaguely seen to be gradually being withdrawn back into his body. Earth-rank defensive martial skill. Duan Ling Tian's pupils constricted. I admit defeat. Meanwhile, Gao Yuhai admitted defeat. He admitted defeat? Weren't they evenly matched? The surrounding crowd of spectators went into an uproar, and they all felt disbelief. In their eyes, Long Yun and Gao Yuhai had similar strength. Gao Yuhai had admitted defeat after only a single move? What's going on? Yuhai is sincerely convinced of Saber Young Master's strength. Yet I wonder, what Earth-rank defensive martial skill did you execute earlier? Gao Yuhai looked at Long Yun as he asked sincerely. Earth-rank defensive martial skill? Gao Yuhai's words caused the surroundings to become deathly silent. For a time, the gazes of everyone descended onto Long Yun. Earth-rank defensive martial skill. Normally, an Earth-rank defensive martial skill was something that only a martial artist that had comprehended Earth force or Earth concept was able to execute. Of course, there were a small amount of Earth-rank defensive martial skills that were able to be executed when combined with other types of force and concept. This type of martial skill was extremely rare. Although it was inferior to the defensive martial skill executed using Earth force and Earth concept, yet it was sufficient to occupy a position of advantage against an opponent of equal strength. Just like the current Long Yun. Saber barrier. Long Yun spoke indifferently. Saber barrier. I've remembered it. Gao Yuhao nodded, and then he descended from the combat ring in an elegant manner. Although he'd lost with poise, and it caused others to be unable to refrain from feeling admiration. Saber barrier? Duan Ling Tian's brows raised as he thought to himself. It's slightly similar to the Iron Wall sword body Ji Feng executed that day, but Ji Feng's Iron Wall sword body is at most only a low-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill. This Long Yun saber barrier ought to be a high-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill. I never imagined that this Saber Young Master had actually cultivated an Earth-rank defensive martial skill. It seems to not be an ordinary Earth-rank defensive martial skill. If it's a low-grade Earth-rank martial skill, then even if it's cultivated to the perfection stage, it might not be able to resist young Master Gao's attack. Cultivating an Earth-rank defensive martial skill with Earth force or Earth concept is the way of kings. Using other force or concept to cultivate an Earth-rank defensive martial skill is lacking in the end. The Earth-rank defensive martial skill cultivated by this Saber Young Master is very likely a middle-grade or high-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. Even if it was the representatives of the various powers and imperial kingdoms, their expressions had become serious. Although low-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skills that were executed by other forces and concepts besides the Earth force or Earth concept were rare, if they wanted one, they had methods of obtaining it. But this level of defensive martial skill wasn't of any use towards martial artists whose strength was approaching the Void Initiation stage or at the Void Initiation stage and above. Even if they executed it, it would be like a piece of paper before an opponent of similar strength as them. A middle-grade or high-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill was different. A middle-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill had an extremely great use towards Void Initiation stage martial artists. Of course, if a martial artist at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above used his full strength, the martial artist was practically able to disregard a middle-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill. As for a high-grade Earth-rank defensive martial skill, it had a great use until one stepped into the 7th level of the Void Interpretation stage. For a time, many people looked at Long Yun with gazes filled with envy, jealousy, and greed. All this was because Long Yun had executed that Earth-rank defensive martial skill earlier. The other 8 combat rings were filled with noise and excitement as well. The 8 combat ring masters changed unceasingly, and the strength of the master became stronger and stronger, whereas, on the combat ring that Long Yun stood on, there was temporarily no one that challenged him. Duan Ling Tian. Long Yun's burning gaze stared at Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes were filled with burning battle intent. But from the beginning until the end, Duan Ling Tian utterly had no intention of paying attention to him. Meanwhile, one of the 3 remaining Bazo Imperial Kingdom young geniuses had defeated the combat ring master of another combat ring to become the new master. You and you, do you two dare battle me? The young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom glanced at Duan Ling Tian before glancing at Su Li and asking with a deep voice. Instantly, a wave of booing sounded out in the surroundings as expected. Do members of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom specialize in choosing right persimmons to squash? Amongst the 5 young geniuses of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, besides that saber young master who's already on another combat ring and that sword young master, only the other 3 people haven't fought yet. One of them has the oldest age, and he's probably a figure that's ranked at the top portion of the 5 great young masters. As for the other 2 people, they ought to not be figures from the 5 great young masters. Between these 2 people, the one with an older age seems to only be 27 or 28, and the younger one looks to be around 25. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. Many people sneered at the choice of the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. Su Li, he wants to challenge you and me? Will you go first, or shall I? Duan Ling Tian looked at Su Li and asked with a smile. I'll go first. As soon as Su Li finished speaking, he leaped up onto the combat ring and stood in confrontation with the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. You're a figure from the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom as well. The young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom seemed to want to confirm Su Li's identity. No, Su Li spoke indifferently. Meanwhile, the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom heaved a sigh of relief, and a bloody sheen arose in his eyes. Then don't hope of returning with your life this time. You want to kill me? A strand of killing intent was faintly brewing in the depths of Su Li's eyes. Of course, the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom spoke as a matter of course. When Duan Ling Tian heard the words spoken by the young man, he couldn't help but glance at the young man in pity. This fellow, a mere 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist, wanted to kill Su Li? That'll depend on if you have the ability. Su Li didn't get angry, but instead started laughing. But the killing intent in the depths of his eyes had already been brewed to the point of appearing in his eyes. Humph! The young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom grunted coldly, and then his figure flashed like a bolt of lightning to shoot towards Su Li. In his hand, origin energy skyrocketed on a grade 5 spirit weapon, and it carried along strands of gentle blue-colored energy. Half-step advanced water force. In the sky, an ancient horned dragon silhouette was escorted by 2,300+ ancient mammoth silhouettes as they gushed towards Su Li. 6th-level void prying stage. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Die! The young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom shouted out explosively as he pounced towards Su Li, and he actually intended to kill Su Li with a single strike. When the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom, an extremely short distance away, Su Li made a move. Origin energy gradually pulsated in Su Li's hand to instantly form a 3-foot-long blade. Origin energy flickered on the tip of the sword, and it was extremely sharp. Along with Su Li's origin energy roiling, an ancient horned dragon silhouettes that was escorted by 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air above him. Ninth level of the void prying stage. Instantly, someone exclaimed out in shock. A single stone caused 1,000 ripples. Only now did the people present realize that Su Li's current movements didn't utilize force or a spirit weapon. He'd only used pure origin energy to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to form an ancient horned dragon silhouette and 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes. This was obviously the symbol of a 9th-level void prying stage martial artist. How strong! Presently, the young geniuses of the various powers and imperial kingdoms, including the young geniuses that were in fierce battle on the other 8 combat rings, had stopped fighting, and they stared blankly at the phenomenon in the sky above Su Li. 9th level of the Void Prying Stage. This Su Li, Qi Ming, and Prince Shen couldn't help but be moved. Bang! The representative of Bazo Imperial Kingdom, Wei Kuan's hand clenched slightly and broke the armrest of the chair, yet he wasn't aware of it. He's a 9th level Void Prying Stage martial artist. Admit defeat quickly. At the same time, Wei Kuan hurriedly sent a voice transmission to pierce into the ears of the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom that pounced towards Su Li. But would he be in time? Swish. On the combat ring, after Su Li condensed his origin energy into a 3-foot-long blade, he swiftly stabbed towards the combat ring beneath him. Right at this instant, strands of aura that was sharp to the extreme stretched out abruptly on the 3-foot-long blade in Su Li's hand. Whoosh! At this instant, another ancient horned dragon appeared in the sky. Bang! At the same time, the 3-foot-long blade in Su Li's hand that was condensed from origin energy descended onto the combat ring, and he was instead brought flying by the repulsive force to easily dodge the attack from the Bazo Imperial Kingdom's young man that approached menacingly. In the next moment, Su Li had dodged behind the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. I admit. Meanwhile, the young man received Wei Kuan's voice transmission and opened his mouth, intending to admit defeat. But he didn't have the chance to say the word defeat. Swish! A 3-foot-long blade that was like a stroke of the gods pierced through from his back, and along with the 3-foot-long blade that was condensed from origin energy dispersing. Bang! Fresh blood shot out violently from the chest and back of the young man, and his entire body fell into a pool of blood. After twitching for a few times, he was completely devoid of any signs of life. Dead. But besides the few people from the Bazo Imperial Kingdom, no one had the time to pay attention to his life or death now. The gazes of most people had simultaneously descended onto the combat ring and descended onto the 2 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes in the sky above the red-clothed young man that were accumulating force while waiting to be deployed. First level sword concept. A 9th level Void Prying Stage martial that isn't using a spirit weapon obtained an extra strength of 1 ancient horned dragon. This red-clothed young man from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom has comprehended 1st level sword concept. This red-clothed young man is already halfway into the Void Initiation stage. He's completely capable of breaking through to the Void Initiation stage before the martial competition of the dynasty starts. He'll surely occupy one of the 10 positions today. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. Su Li's strength had shocked them. Not yet 30 yet at the 9th level of the Void Prying stage, and has comprehended 1st level sword concept. King Yong's sonorous voice slowly sounded out. You, what's your name? King Yong's gaze descended onto the red-clothed young man and asked. Instantly, many of the young geniuses present looked at Su Li with envy. After all, not everyone was able to make King Yong take the initiative to ask for their name. Su Li. On the combat ring, Su Li nodded to King Yong and spoke neither humbly nor arrogantly. Su Li, I've remembered you. King Yong lightly smiled as he nodded, and he was extremely amiable to Su Li. Alas, revered Elder Wei, I'm truly sorry. These little fellows are too impetuous and don't know how to hold back. Qi Ming looked at Wei Kuan and shook his head as she sighed, and then he said via voice transmission, why not you take the remaining 2 young geniuses of your Bazo Imperial Kingdom and leave, so as to avoid that in the end, you'd have come with 7 yet go home as 2. Qi Ming. Wei Kuan's body trembled. He was angered to the point his face flushed red, his eyeballs seemed about to split, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The remaining 2 young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom looked at each other and could see the terror in each other's eyes. Meanwhile, no one ascended the combat ring Su Li was on to battle him. The 2 great young geniuses of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had both occupied a combat ring each. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom can be said to be in the limelight this time. Yeah, 2 monsters have actually come from such a small Imperial Kingdom. If nothing unexpected happens, both of these 2 people ought to be able to obtain one of the 10 positions to head to the Darkhan Dynasty. Many people looked favorably upon Su Li and Long Yun. Time silently passed by. Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui had successively ascended to the other combat rings. But unfortunately, with their strengths, they weren't able to become a combat ringmaster that no one challenged. Duan Ling Tian, the two of us probably have no fate with those 10 positions. Everything will depend on you, Su Li and Long Yun. Luo Zhan sighed. No wonder they say that experts are numerous like the clouds in the empire. I originally thought that after I broke through to the 6th level of the void prying stage, my strength could already be considered to be not bad. But now, if one doesn't possess a cultivation at the 7th level of the void prying stage or above, it's extremely difficult to become one of the final combat ring masters. Chen Xiaoshui deeply agreed. Both of you shouldn't feel dejected. Besides Su Li and Long Yun, all these martial artists at the 7th level of the void prying stage or above are older than both of you. When both of you are of the same age as them, you too might not be inferior to them. Duan Ling Tian consoled. Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui both nodded when they heard Duan Ling Tian's words of consolation, but the corners of their mouths couldn't help but curl into a wisp of a bitter expression. Duan Ling Tian noticed the dejected feelings of Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui. Duan Ling Tian let out a breath of air when he saw his consolation was of no effect, and he sent a voice transmission into the ears of Chen Xiaoshui and Luo Zhan. Both of you don't have to belittle yourselves. No matter if it was Su Li, Long Yun, or me, it's all because we wander about outside and obtain fortuitous encounters that we possess these accomplishments today. If we didn't have any fortuitous encounters, then we might not be able to compare to the two of you. Duan Ling Tian spoke slowly. When Luo Zhan and Chen Xiaoshui heard Duan Ling Tian's words, their originally dim eyes abruptly lit up at this moment. Fortuitous encounters. Both of them looked at each other and saw tacit understanding within the eyes of each other. This was something that Duan Ling Tian didn't quite notice. Presently, Duan Ling Tian's gaze had descended onto one of the remaining 2 young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom. This person had ascended onto a combat ring and was battling a 6th level void prying stage martial artist. In the end, he'd obtained victory, and his abilities were completely revealed before Duan Ling Tian's eyes. 6th level of the void prying stage. Half-step advanced force. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Kid from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, amongst the 5 of you, it seems that only you haven't ascended to the combat ring. You wouldn't have occupied a position from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom just for the sake of watching the show, right? The young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom stood on the combat ring as he looked at Duan Ling Tian with a provocative gaze. Do you dare ascend to the ring and fight me? This caused all the people that were intending to ascend to the combat ring and battle the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom to stop their footsteps. They were happy to watch the show. For a time, Duan Ling Tian had become the absolute center of attention. This young man is one of the 5 young geniuses from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom as well. Yet up until now, he still hasn't entered the ring. He looks to be around the age of 25, and he's even younger than Su Li. The members of Bazo Imperial Kingdom are just like before, fond of choosing ripe persimmons to squash. Haha, they took Su Li to be a ripe persimmon earlier. I almost laughed myself to death. I wonder if this young man possesses a natural talent and comprehension ability like Su Li? I don't think so. Even in our Darkstone Empire, Su Li's natural talent and comprehension ability could be considered to be at the top. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Ling Tian moved, seeming to have transformed into a gust of wind that descended onto the combat ring and stand in confrontation with the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. On the other hand, when he saw Duan Ling Tian ascend to the combat ring so readily, the young man from Bazo Imperial Kingdom felt slightly lacking in confidence. He originally thought that Duan Ling Tian wouldn't dare ascend to the combat ring, and in this way, he would be able to wantonly humiliate Duan Ling Tian. What? Regret provoking me. Duan Ling Tian looked at the young man as he spoke indifferently. The young man's expression sank slightly. He was indeed regretful, but could he speak of it? Could he afford to lose this face? How about this? I'll give you a chance. Duan Ling Tian's gaze shot at the final young genius from Bazo Imperial Kingdom that was outside the combat ring. You ascend the combat ring as well. I'll challenge the both of you together. As he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian placed emphasis on his tone. Of course, if both of you don't dare, you can admit defeat. Duan Ling Tian's face quickly revealed a bright and brilliant smile, and it seemed as if he was already sure that the two young men from Bazo Imperial Kingdom would admit defeat. Playing tricks. On the high platform, Wei Kuan snorted coldly, and then he looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression that seemed to be saying, "I've already seen through your tricks." There were two reasons Wei Kuan would think like this. This first was that he saw Qi Ming frowning. The second was that he didn't think that this young man that was merely around the age of 25 would be so strong. Huang Dong. Hu Wei, since he insists on courting death, then both of you should properly fulfill his wishes. Wei Kuan's voice transmission went out. The two young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom heaved a sigh of relief when they heard Wei Kuan. Since you want to court death, then I and Hu Wei will send you off. The young man outside the combat ring, Huang Dong, flew up to descend onto the combat ring before standing shoulder to shoulder with Hu Wei in confrontation with Duan Ling Tian. Wait! Right at this moment, a sonorous voice sounded out from the high platform. It was Qi Ming. He looked at King Yong and spoke with a serious expression. King Yong, these two young men from Bazo Imperial Kingdom fighting 2-against-1 seems to go against the rules of the young genius competition, right? Qi Ming. King Yong hadn't even spoken when Wei Kuan couldn't refrain from ridiculing. Earlier, everyone present here heard it extremely clearly. It's the member of your Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that spoke of jointly challenging the two young geniuses of our Bazo Imperial Kingdom. Now, you want to go back on his word? Do you respect King Yong? Wei Kuan's words were spoken with righteousness. Begin. King Yong had finally spoken, and he tacitly consented to the young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom going 2-against-1. It was just like Wei Kuan had said. This matter was brought up by the members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom after all. Since one had spoken such words, then one must pay the price for it. Qi Ming sat back down, and his expression was extremely unsightly. Duan Ling Tian looked at Qi Ming and was slightly bewildered. What is Vice Dean Qi doing? Does he have no confidence in me? Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian seized the opportunity while those two people from Bazo Imperial Kingdom don't know your ability to kill them before they admit defeat. An excited voice transmission entered into Duan Ling Tian's ears. Vice Dean Qi. Duan Ling Tian was dumbstruck. He was able to discern that this was Qi Ming's voice transmission. But the Qi Ming on the high platform seemed to be a different sight. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian understood. Qi Ming was intentionally showing weakness to make the two representatives from Bazo Imperial Kingdom to put down their guard. He's truly a sly old fox, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Kid from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, we'll send you on your way now. The Bazo Imperial Kingdom's Hu Wei and Huang Dong revealed frenzied smiles as their figures flashed and they dashed out. They used all their abilities the instant they attacked. 6th level of the Void Prying Stage. Half-step Advanced Force. Grade 5 Spirit Weapon. Whoosh. Whoosh. Two figures that were swift like the wind flashed out, and they were like two venomous serpents that had gone berserk as they bit towards Duan Ling Tian in unison. It was as if they wouldn't stop until they bit Duan Ling Tian to death. Idiots. The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a slight cold smile, and a dim light flashed into appearance in the depths of his eyes. 1,000 illusions. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force fused into his soul brand to execute the soul skill that belonged only to him. An illusory space instantly enveloped Huang Dong and Hu Wei, whereas Duan Ling Tian instead stood on the spot, not moving like a mountain. Has this young genius from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom gone mad? Is he courting death? The surrounding crowd of spectators were dumbstruck when they saw Duan Ling Tian didn't make the slightest move when he was facing the combined attack of the two young men from Bazo Imperial Kingdom, and they all felt that Duan Ling Tian was looking for death. But in the next moment, they were all stunned simultaneously. Heaven! What did I see? Under the gazes of everyone present, The attacks of Hu Wei and Huang Dong actually turned around and flashed to the side at the instant their attacks were just about to descend onto Duan Ling Tian's body. Huang Dong and Hu Wei went left and right respectively as they separated and charged towards an empty place on the combat ring and attacked the air. It was as if they'd lost their minds. For a time, besides the members from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom who were mentally prepared since long ago, everyone present, including King Yong, were dumbstruck. The extremely large center square of the imperial city flowed with streams of people, yet at this moment, it was terrifyingly silent, and only waves of muffled breathing could be heard. What ability is that? King Yong was the first to recover from his shock, and he had a serious expression. Have these two young geniuses from the Bazo Imperial Kingdom gone mad? They're actually attacking the air? Madmen. The surrounding crowd of spectators gradually recovered from their shock as well. On the high platform, the Bazo Imperial Kingdom's Wei Kuan and the other representatives had extremely unsightly expressions. Huang Dong, Hu Wei, what are the two of you doing? Wei Kuan's voice transmission pierced into the ears of Huang Dong and Hu Wei. Boo. The two of them seemed as if they'd utterly not heard him, and they remained indifferent, continuing to do their best to attack the air. When Wei Kuan instinctively looked at Qi Ming, he instead noticed Qi Ming looking at him as well. At this moment, there wasn't a single bit of worry on Qi Ming's face. Wei Kuan suddenly realized that perhaps he'd been deceived by Qi Ming. Look, quickly, they're fighting each other. Suddenly, someone shouted out. Wei Kuan glanced over. He saw that the two young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom had actually started attacking one another, and their eyes were completely red. Can anyone tell me what the F***K is going on? When he saw Huang Dong and Hu Wei doing their utmost best to attack each other, and that they would sooner or later perish together if this went on, Wei Kuan's face went gloomy, and he felt he was on the verge of going mad from anger. Especially when he saw the violet-clothed young man from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom standing at the side of the combat ring and was leisurely watching the show. Pooh! Wei Kuan's vital energy and blood roiled, and he was angered to the point he spat out a mouthful of blood. King Yong, I admit defeat on their behalf. Wei Kuan looked at King Yong and spoke with slight loss of composure. Wei Kuan didn't doubt it in the slightest that if this were to continue, all of the 5 most outstanding young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom he brought over would be dead. It's only effective if they themselves admit defeat. This is the rules. King Yong replied indifferently. Wei Kuan's body shook as his eyes went crimson red. Huang Dong, Hu Wei, both of you stop. When he noticed voice transmissions were of no use, Wei Kuan shouted out with a grim voice as he wanted to restrain Huang Dong and Hu Wei. But unfortunately, Huang Dong and Hu Wei still didn't hear him, and they continued battling each other. Not long after, the two of them were fully covered in injuries. Bang! Finally, Huang Dong noticed a flaw and killed Hu Wei, who was a similar strength as him, whereas Huang Dong, whose body was covered in injuries, was on the verge of collapse as well. Ha ha ha! Members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom are nothing special. Huang Dong stood there as he laughed loudly into the sky. His laughter quickly suppressed the clamorous and bustling noise of the scene and caused the scene to return to deathly silence. After a short moment, has this Huang Dong really gone mad? Does he think he killed the person from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Looks like he has really lost his mind. Many people looked at Huang Dong with a strange gaze. Pooh! On the high platform, Wei Kuan was once again angered to the point he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body started trembling intensely. What exactly was going on? Why did such a thing happen? Ha ha ha! Huang Dong's laughter completely suppressed the whispered discussions of the surrounding crowd of spectators. Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Ling Tian stood on the spot without moving like a mountain, yet his hand made a move. He slowly raised his hand and pointed out. Instantly, swish! A point force condensed into form from origin energy was accompanied by an ancient horned dragon in the sky as it whistled out menacingly and pierced through between Huang Dong's brows. Pooh! A light sound resounded out, and a bloody hole appeared between Huang Dong's brows before he stiffly fell down, entirely without a trace of life. He was completely dead. Up to this point, all 5 great young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom had died. On the high platform, the Bazo Imperial Kingdom's representative, Wei Kuan, and the other representative by his side had livid expressions, and their bodies trembled violently. All the 5 young geniuses of their Bazo Imperial Kingdom had actually died. Moreover, the young geniuses had died before their eyes. These 5 people were all pillars of their Bazo Imperial Kingdom in the future. Qi Ming. Influenced by his shame and rage, Wei Kuan looked at Qi Ming and spoke with a voice transmission that was filled with violent temper. It's you, it's all because of you. All of this is because you intentionally dug a hole and make me jump in. It's you who caused their deaths. It's you. When he heard Wei Kuan's voice transmission, Qi Ming slowly turned around to look at Wei Kuan as if he was looking at an idiot. Wei Kuan, even if I dug a hole, jumping in or not seems to be your own choice, right? Now, you still want to push all the responsibility onto me? First, think properly about how you'll explain this matter to the Emperor of your Bazo Imperial Kingdom once you return. Ha ha ha. Qi Ming's voice transmission was filled with elated laughter. In the past, because of the mineral vein competition between the 2 imperial kingdoms, although the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and the Bazo Imperial Kingdom didn't start a war, yet they were like fire and water. They wished for nothing more than to annihilate the other and celebrate after. Presently, when he saw all of the 5 most outstanding young geniuses of Bazo Imperial Kingdom die, Qi Ming was extremely happy as well. Moreover, as far as Qi Ming was concerned, all of this was because Wei Kuan and the 5 young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom had taken the initiative to provoke them. Otherwise, the end might have not been like this. As the saying goes, don't go too far when doing something, so that there's always room for turning back. The members of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom had obviously not done what these words preached. 7th level of the Void Prying Stage. Meanwhile, the surroundings went into an uproar. After Long Yun and Su Li, the violet-clothed young man on the combat ring had become the center of attention as expected. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom is truly heaven-defying. First, an 8th level Void Prying Stage young genius appeared. Then a 9th level Void Prying Stage young genius appeared. Now, the youngest amongst them is actually a 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artist. Based on his looks, he's at most around the age of 25. Such natural talent is sufficient to cause all the young geniuses of our Darkstone Empire to blush with shame. After today, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom is bound to become famous in the entire Darkstone Empire. Or speaking in a more normal way, this Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom has become completely hot. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, and their words were filled with emotional sighs. Duan Ling Tian. Chen Xiao Shui and Luo Zhan looked at Duan Ling Tian with faces that were covered in smiles, and they felt happy for Duan Ling Tian. Of course, they were still slightly shocked in their hearts. Duan Ling Tian had actually broken through to the 7th level of the Void Prying Stage. This was something that they didn't know beforehand. Duan Ling Tian had broken through to the 7th level of the Void Prying Stage. Long Yun stood on the combat ring as he looked at Duan Ling Tian, who was on another combat ring, and his expression became slightly gloomy. His natural talent is actually so strong. Although Long Yun himself had broken through to the 8th level of the Void Prying Stage, possessing such improvements in a short 1 year of time was sufficient to make anyone shocked. But only he knew himself that the reason he had such improvements was completely because he'd successively consumed 2 spirit fruits during this year. One of these spirit fruits was even similar to the reward provided to the person that obtained the honor of being the #1 young genius in the Empire, the Void Fuse fruit. So, he didn't have much yearning towards the Void Fuse fruit. Besides obtaining one of the 10 positions to head to the Darkhan dynasty and participate in the dynasty martial competition, his objective was to defeat Duan Ling Tian. I wonder if Duan Ling Tian's demonic technique is still effective towards me after I broke through to the 8th level of the Void Prying Stage now. Long Yun thought in his heart. Where exactly did Duan Ling Tian learn that demonic technique? Even Master doesn't know what exactly that demonic technique is. This was something that was extremely unbelievable in Long Yun's opinion. After all, his master was the strongest existence he'd seen with his own 2 eyes in his entire lifetime. and even his master being unable to see through Duan Ling Tian's demonic technique caused him to feel that it was slightly difficult to accept. Duan Ling Tian, you didn't disappoint me as expected. Su Li's chilly face was suffused with a wisp of a smile now. He'd known Duan Ling Tian when he was 18. At that time, Duan Ling Tian was only a 16-year-old youth. Later on, when Duan Ling Tian revealed his strength time after time, it even caused him to feel a wave of powerlessness. When they passed through the Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp's test and entered Paladin Academy together, he was even thrown off far behind by Duan Ling Tian. At that time, he felt that it would be impossible for him to chase up to Duan Ling Tian again in his entire lifetime. Unexpectedly, the many unforeseen events that happened later on caused him to encounter his current master, and he'd completely chased up to Duan Ling Tian and even surpassed Duan Ling Tian. In the past, this was something that he didn't dare imagine. Not bad, not bad. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom hides many talents. What's your name? King Yong's burning gaze descended onto Duan Ling Tian as he asked with a light smile. Under numerous envious and jealous gazes, Duan Ling Tian nodded to King Yong. King Yong, I'm Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian. Instantly, all the people present deeply remembered this name. Duan Ling Tian? Ling Tian. It's a good name. King Yong lightly smiled as he nodded. I hope that you'll be able to obtain one of the 10 positions to head to the Darkhan dynasty this time. I think highly of you. I think highly of you. A short sentence from King Yong had pushed Duan Ling Tian to the front of the storm. Duan Ling Tian. Prince Sheng, who sat by Qi Ming's side, had an ashen expression. He never imagined that Duan Ling Tian had actually acquired such a great breakthrough suddenly. The eyes of the numerous young geniuses from the various powers and various imperial kingdoms went red. I'll come try your strength. In next to no time, a blue-clothed young man flew up to ascend to the combat ring and stand in confrontation with Duan Ling Tian. This was a 7th-level void-prying stage martial artist just like Duan Ling Tian, and he even had a grade 5 spirit weapon to rely on his hands. However, it was precisely because he only comprehended half-step advanced force that it caused him to be blasted off the combat ring by Duan Ling Tian in a single move. From the beginning until the end, Duan Ling Tian didn't utilize his soul skill. As far as he was concerned, an existence like this wasn't enough for him to utilize his soul skill. As for the two people from the Bazo Imperial Kingdom, he'd done it completely for the sake of playing a cruel joke on them. The repeated provocation and killing intent revealed by the young geniuses of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom had caused him to feel extreme rage that came from his heart. Advanced Wind Force. The people present were shocked by Duan Ling Tian once again. Possessing a cultivation at the 7th level of the void-prying stage at the age of only around 25 was already sufficient to shock them. Now, he revealed Advanced Wind Force. Perhaps Duan Ling Tian's comprehension ability and natural talent is entirely not inferior to Su Li. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom is a miraculous place. It's actually able to give birth to such monsters. If I have the chance, I'll surely head to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom to pay my respects to this miraculous place. The surrounding crowd of spectators sighed with emotion. On the other hand, the young geniuses present truly realized how terrifying Duan Ling Tian was at this moment. Meanwhile, combat ring masters that no one challenged had appeared on the other combat rings. Practically all these combat ring masters were existences at the 8th level of the void-prying stage. Only 2 combat rings had 4 7th-level void-prying stage martial artists competing on it. Duan Ling Tian, right? Zhongnan, will try your strength. A figure flew up the combat ring Duan Ling Tian stood on, and sure enough, he drew the gazes of everyone present. It's Zhongnan. Zhongnan is finally making a move. Zhongnan is ranked the 3rd amongst the younger generation of our Darkstone Empire. His cultivation is at the 9th level of the void-prying stage, and he has even comprehended 1st-level Earth concept. Zhongnan's strength isn't inferior to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Su Li. The surrounding crowd of spectators went into an uproar. Ranked the 3rd amongst the younger generation of the Darkstone Empire, Duan Ling Tian sized up the young man before him in surprise. The young man was around the age of 35, and he possessed an ordinary appearance that belonged to the kind of being so ordinary he couldn't be found in a crowd. Ninth level of the void prying stage and comprehended first level earth concept, yet he's actually only ranked third amongst the younger generation of Darkstone Empire? Duan Ling Tian's heart shook. Looks like his earlier guess was very likely to be correct. It was very like that an existence at the void initiation stage and above was present amongst the young geniuses of Darkstone Empire. Although I suspect myself to be bullying the young in this battle, but I subconsciously think that you aren't as simple as you seem on the surface. Zhong Nin had a heavy expression when he faced Duan Ling Tian. What do you mean? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be stunned. There's nothing to say about you defeating that 7th level void prying stage martial artist earlier. Yet you obviously used an extraordinary ability when dealing with those two young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom. This time, Zhongnan sent a voice transmission into Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be surprised when he heard this. When everyone felt that the two young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom had lost their minds, this Zhongnan had actually noticed an inkling. Whoosh! With a raise of his hand, a completely pitch-black rod appeared on Zhongnan's hand. Grade 5 Spirit Rod. Duan Ling Tian's brows raised, and he noticed the rod in Zhongnan's hand was a Grade 5 spirit weapon at the first possible moment. Zhongnan was the first rod user Duan Ling Tian had seen in the recent years. A rod was the ancestor of all weapons. In the world, when sabers, swords, spears, and other weapons hadn't been born, the weapons of everyone was the simplest rod. So the rod could be said to be the ancestor of all weapons. Of course, even though the rod was simple, wanting to use it properly wasn't an easy thing. Although a rod didn't have an edge like a sword and saber. But once it exploded out, its might was extremely overbearing, and it was even able to shatter the internal organs and all the bones in a person's body. I heard that 1 month ago, Zhongnan relied on the Grade 5 Spirit Rod in his hand to smash a 9th level void prying stage martial artist that had comprehended advanced force to death with a single strike. Yeah, Zhongnan's martial skill, 1,000-ton rod, is too overbearing. Supposedly, that 1,000-ton rod is a high-grade Earth rank offensive martial skill. Zhongnan relied on this 1,000-ton rod to comprehend all the way through of Earth force to even comprehend Earth concept now. When they saw the spirit rod that had appeared in Zhongnan's hand, the surroundings went into an uproar once again. Duan Ling Tian heard the surrounding discussions, and he deeply realized how extraordinary Zhongnan was. My spiritual force is currently at the 9th level of the void prying stage, whereas, even though this Zhongnan is a 9th level void prying stage martial artist, he has comprehended 1st level Earth concept. I wonder if the illusory space my soul skill, 1,000 illusions, creates is able to seal him up. Thoughts spun in Duan Ling Tian's mind, and he thought about many things. Duan Ling Tian had already made a decision in his heart. If the soul skill, 1,000 illusion was useless to this person, then he'd directly admit defeat. Watch out. Needless to say, Zhongnan was very above-board person, and he took the initiative to warn Duan Ling Tian before attacking. Subsequently, Zhongnan raised his foot to stomp on the ground, causing the combat ring to quake as if an earthquake occurred. Instantly, along with the origin energy on Zhongnan's body raging, an ancient horned dragon silhouette that was surrounded by 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes like a bright moon surrounded by twinkling stars had appeared in the sky. Along with an earthen yellow energy appearing on Zhongnan's origin energy, another ancient horned dragon silhouette appeared out of thin air. 1st level Earth concept. He still wants to rely on the energy of the Earth? Duan Ling Tian's expression couldn't help but go slightly serious when he saw Zhongnan's entire body gradually form a peculiar connection with the Earth through his 1st level Earth concept at this moment. Immediately, another 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared in the sky above Zhongnan. This was energy of the Earth that Zhongnan had drawn support from by using his 1st level Earth concept. This wasn't the end. Whoosh! Along with the origin energy on Zhongnan's body pouring into the Grade 5 spirit rod in his hand. Another 5,700 ancient mammoth silhouettes gradually condensed into form above him. In the end, When Zhongnan exerted his full strength to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth, the movement caused by this was fixed at 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and 2,700 ancient mammoth silhouettes. If the battle wasn't conducted far from the ground, then even Su Li would probably be far from a match for Zhongnan. Duan Ling Tian's expression was extremely serious. Moreover, this Zhongnan had comprehended Earth concept, so it may be assumed that he'd cultivated an Earth-ranked defensive martial skill as well. Bang! Zhongnan stepped out, causing the ground of the combat ring to crack open like a spider web that spread out towards the surroundings. At this moment, Zhongnan seemed to have transformed into a god of the earth and controlled boundless divine energy of the earth. Duan Ling Tian is probably going to lose. It can only be said that he's unfortunate for encountering Zhongnan. Zhongnan's strength can be considered to be invincible under the Void Initiation stage in our Darkstone Empire. If it isn't in existence at the Void Initiation stage or above, then it's practically impossible to defeat Zhongnan. Most of the surrounding spectators didn't look favorably upon Duan Ling Tian. Only the few people from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom looked with anticipation at the development of the scene before them. Of course, not everyone was anticipating it. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Prince Sheng looked at Duan Ling Tian with a gaze filled with coldness, and he wished for nothing more than to kill Duan Ling Tian and celebrate after it. I hope Duan Ling Tian is killed by this Zhongnan. Otherwise, with the advancement of his cultivation, then not to mention me, even the Azure Forest Trisect might not be able to do anything to him in the future. Extreme coldness arose in Prince Sheng's heart. In the combat ring, Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath and a dim light gradually flashed into existence deep within his eyes, and it seemed to have transformed into 2 balls of evil flames. Victory or defeat lays on this move, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and as Zhongnan charged towards him with a speed that grew swifter and swifter. 1,000 illusions. Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force pierced into his soul brand, and he'd successfully execute the soul skill that belonged solely to him. An illusory space that he'd just constructed enveloped Zhongnan within it. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian was slightly perturbed as he was deeply afraid that the illusory space would be struck to dispersal by Zhongnan's first-level Earth concept. Along with the passage of time, although the illusory space shook slightly, yet it remained completely whole, and it caused Duan Ling Tian to be unable to refrain from heaving a sigh of relief. Looks like the illusory space constructed by my current spiritual force isn't afraid of first-level concept. But if it's second-level concept, then the illusory space with this level of strength would probably be struck to dispersal. Duan Ling Tian discerned this from the reaction of the illusory space. Since a first-level concept was unable to strike the illusory space constructed by his 1,000 illusions to dispersal, then he was currently the controller of this small world that Zhongnan was within. He could control the life and death of Zhongnan. Under the gazes of everyone present, Zhongnan made a move. But when they saw Zhongnan still heavily smash down his rod onto the air after Duan Ling Tian had dodged to the side, they were completely dumbstruck. Could it be that Zhongnan has lost his mind as well? Right when the crowd of people were astonished and bewildered, Zhongnan swung up his rod and smashed it out once more, and he once again smashed it onto the air on the other side. This caused the surrounding people to be speechless. King Yong, this Duan Ling Tian wouldn't have used an inscription, right? The old man that sat by King Yong's side couldn't refrain from asking. He didn't use an inscription. King Yong shook his head, and his eyes were filled with wonder as well. He'd gone through an entire lifetime, yet it was still the first time he'd seen such a strange scene. This feeling, it's like as if Zhongnan has fallen into an illusion formation constructed from an inscription formation. How exactly did Duan Ling Tian achieve this? In the eyes of King Yong at this moment, the violet-clothed young man on the combat ring was mysterious to the point he couldn't help but be frightened by it. Whoosh! In the combat ring, Zhongnan smashed his rod out once more. This time, he was already standing on the border of the combat ring, yet he seemed to not notice it in the slightest. It ought to end already. Duan Ling Tian shrugged before slowly walked towards Zhongnan and standing behind him. Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Ling Tian's hand pressed onto Zhong Nan's back and casually pushing Zhong Nan off the combat ring. Zhong Nan had lost. Can anyone tell me what's going on? This is too peculiar, right? Duan Ling Tian and Zhong Nan aren't acting right. It's surely not an act. Otherwise, how could such a strange thing happen? I think that this isn't a coincidence. Don't forget that those young geniuses from Bazo Imperial Kingdom earlier had an almost similar appearance as Zhong Nan now. Yeah, if it's an act. Would those two people form Bazo Imperial Kingdom be willing to be killed by Duan Ling Tian? The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, and they were all shocked by Duan Ling Tian's ability. Duan Ling Tian. Unknowingly, a wisp of a bitter smile had appeared on Su Li's face. He knew that even if Duan Ling Tian were to go against him now, he would lose without a doubt. Zhong Nan's strength wasn't inferior to him, and it was even to the extent that if they were to battle on the ground, Zhong Nan would be able to easily defeat him by relying on the energy of the earth. Yet now, Duan Ling Tian had defeated Zhong Nan on the ground. Although it wasn't a true victory by strength, Zhong Nan had indeed lost. In a battle between martial artists, the process wasn't important, as the most important was the outcome. I originally thought that I would be able to throw Duan Ling Tian far behind me this time, but unexpectedly, he'd already chased up. Su Li sighed in his heart. How can this be possible? On another combat ring, Long Yun had an expression of disbelief as he looked at the scene before him. He wasn't willing to believe that all this was true. He knew that he was far from being a match for that Zhong Nan, yet Duan Ling Tian had defeated Zhong Nan. In this instant, Long Yun felt a wave of powerlessness in his heart. Even if Su Li goes against this Zhong Nan, he would probably have no confidence in obtaining victory. But Duan Ling Tian has instead defeated Zhong Nan. Long Yun realized that he would probably have to defeat Su Li first before being able to defeat Duan Ling Tian. Unknowingly, Duan Ling Tian had even thrown Su Li far behind himself. Duan Ling Tian. On the high platform, the astonishment on Qi Ming's face gradually dispersed, and replacing it was a dense, smiling expression, whereas Prince Sheng at the side had an extremely unsightly expression. Duan Ling Tian is actually so terrifying now. I'm afraid no one under the Void Initiation stage is able to be a match for him. A raging storm arose in Prince Sheng's heart. Duan Ling Tian was invincible under the Void Initiation stage. Prince Sheng. Right at this moment, a voice transmission sounded out by Prince Sheng's ears. Prince Sheng looked towards Qi Ming with a puzzled expression. He was able to discern that the owner of the void transmission was Qi Ming. I know that the matter in the caged battle arena that day and the humiliation the little prince suffered caused you to hate Duan Ling Tian to the bones. But I still hope that you and Duan Ling Tian can let bygones be bygones. Qi Ming continued via voice transmission. You've seen Duan Ling Tian's current achievements as well. He's surely going to the Dark Han dynasty. It's even to the extent that his future and prospects are limitless. In the future, it's probably impossible for you to find an opportunity to get rid of him. Since it's like this, then why not bury the hatchet with him? I'm willing to act as the person between the two of you. How about it? I believe that Duan Ling Tian would still be willing to give me face. Qi Ming's words seemed like he'd give much thought about it. Prince Sheng's body shook. Bury the hatchet? Isn't this asking him to take the initiative to give in? If it's like this, then how would he keep his dignity? But when he thought about it carefully, Qi Ming's words were indeed spoken reasonably. I'll consider it. Prince Sheng took a deep breath and replied via voice transmission. Qi Ming nodded and wasn't surprised by this. If Prince Sheng agreed readily, he would perhaps doubt Prince Sheng's sincerity. As a revered elder of the imperial family, he was extremely familiar of Prince Sheng's character. Why have so many monsters appeared in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? The two representatives of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom had ashen expressions. Especially Wei Kuan, his eyes had unknowingly become tainted with a wisp of crimson red. If it was possible, he wished for nothing more than to charge down the high platform and slaughter all the 5 great young geniuses of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom to vent the hatred in his heart. But his reason told him that he couldn't do this. If he were to dare make a move, Then he would perhaps even be unable to touch the corners of the clothes of the people from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom before he'd be killed by King Yong. King Yong was the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire since over 10 years ago, an existence who was halfway into the void interpretation stage. Now that over 10 years had passed, no one would believe it if it was said that King Yong hadn't stepped into the void interpretation stage yet. Looks like Duanling Tian has obtained a fortuitous encounter again after leaving alone this time. Luo Zhan glanced at Chun Xiao Shuai, who was beside him, and sighed. Perhaps we can't shut ourselves out from the outside world and cultivate. We ought to go take a look at the outside world. Chun Xiao Shuai's eyes flashed as he spoke slowly. Meanwhile, along with Duanling Tian withdrawing his spiritual force, the illusory space formed from the soul skill, thousand illusions, vanished into nothingness, and Zhongnan, who Duanling Tian had pushed off the combat ring, recovered at this moment. When he felt the strange gazes that converged onto himself from the surroundings, he knew that he'd lost, completely lost. When he recalled the scene from before, Zhongnan realized at the first possible moment that all of that was an illusion. It was just like a dream. Thank you. Zhongnan nodded to Duanling Tian and lightly smiled before ascending another combat ring. A 7th level Void Prying Stage Combat Ring Master had just been born on that combat ring. When he saw Zhongnan ascend the combat ring, the 7th level Void Prying Stage Combat Ring Master directly admitted defeat, and it was equivalent to cupping his hands and giving it to Zhongnan. This Zhongnan is interesting. Duanling Tian's brows raised. He naturally knew why Zhongnan thanked him earlier, and it was none other than because he'd shown mercy. After all, he was completely able to kill Zhongnan earlier, but he didn't do so. To Duanling Tian, he didn't have any deep enmity with Zhongnan, whereas, from beginning until the end, Zhongnan had never revealed killing intent towards him, so there was no need for him to kill Zhongnan. Meanwhile, there was still another combat ring where two 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artists were battling intensely. After a short moment, one of them became the combat ring master. But the person had just become the combat ring master when a figure that was like a bolt of lightning lightly descended into the combat ring. This was a green-clothed young man around the age of 35, and his ordinary face seemed as if someone owed him money. Heilong has finally ascended to a combat ring. Heilong is publicly acknowledged to be ranked #2 in the younger generation of our Darkstone Empire. His cultivation is at the 1st level of the Void Initiation stage, and he has even comprehended 1st level wind concept. He ought to enter the battles by now as well. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, whereas that 7th level Void Prying Stage martial artist that had just become the combat ring was obviously a young genius of the Darkstone Empire as well, and his face became slightly grim when he saw Heilong. I admit defeat. In the end, he obediently leaped of the combat ring. Up to this point, a combat ring master had appeared in each of the 9 combat rings. Amongst the 9 combat rings, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had occupied 3 of them. The Darkstone Empire occupied 3 as well, and they were occupied by Heilong, Zhongnan, and Gao Yuhai respectively. Gao Yuhai was precisely the scholarly young man that had lost at the hands of Long Yun, and he ascended to another combat ring later on to become a new combat ring master. Amongst the 3 remaining combat rings, one of them was occupied by a young genius from a top sect in the Darkstone Empire, the Unswerving Sect. The other 2 people were respectively from 2 imperial kingdoms under Darkstone Empire. If no one challenges the 9 great combat ring masters in the next 10 breaths of time, then the 9 combat ring masters will be considered to have been determined. At that time, if someone ascends to the combat rings again, that person can only compete for the honor of being the #1 young genius in the Darkstone Empire. King Yong stood up from his seat, and his voice was like a loud bell as he spoke with a deep voice. The scene became deathly silent, and it bustled with noise and excitement after a short moment. It has finally come to the competition for the #1 young genius in the Empire. But it's probably without suspense. Naturally. Along with the discussions of the spectating crowd, the gazes of many people shot onto a corner of the combat rings and a black-clothed young man that stood there. The black-clothed young man stood there resting his mind with his eyes closed. Duan Ling Tian followed along the gazes of everyone to look over. He's the #1 young genius in the younger generation of Darkstone Empire? The black-clothed young man was a little over 30, and his age looked to be even younger than He Long and Zhongnan. The young man had sword-shaped brows and starry eyes with a face that seemed to have been carved by a blade and was extremely flawless. It's time for Mo Xian to make a move. Mo Xian is the pride of our Darkstone Empire. Amongst the 10 people that are leaving from our Darkstone Empire, he'd most likely to obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Mo Xian is the #1 young genius in the younger generation of Darkstone Empire, and he'll surely win over extremely great honor for our Darkstone Empire. The surrounding crowd of spectators were extremely excited, and they were filled with confidence towards the black-clothed young man. He's called Mo Xian. Duan Ling Tian's brows raised, and then his spiritual force stretched out, intending to determine Mo Xian's cultivation. But his spiritual force hadn't approached Mo Xian when he noticed the spiritual forces from before were coiled around nearby Mo Xian. Looks like I can only inspect his cultivation after he ascends the combat rings later, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian realized that he already had no need to inspect Mo Xian's cultivation. Whoosh! Mo Xian moved, and some of the spectators didn't see Mo Xian's movements clearly at all, whereas Duan Ling Tian and the other young geniuses only saw a black-colored bolt of lightning flash by. Subsequently, Mo Xian had appeared in high above in the sky above the 9 combat rings, and he stood there in midair. His eyes gradually opened up as well. Mo Xian's eyes weren't an ordinary black pupil, but were instead closer to gray in color, and it looked to be extremely deep and serene, to the point it caused others to easily become lost within it. Whoosh! Meanwhile, for lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above Mo Xian and coiled down. Third level of the void initiation stage. Mo Xian has broken through again. The surroundings were in an uproar as they were shocked by the cultivation Mo Xian revealed now. Third level of the void initiation stage. Duan Ling Tian's heart was greatly shocked as he stared blankly at Mo Xian. Mo Xian looked to be around 32 or 33 at most, yet his cultivation had already completely surpassed the numerous young geniuses of Darkstone Empire. There's a type of aura on his Mo Xian that I feel slightly familiar to. It's as if I felt it somewhere. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian's face tightened as he carefully recalled, yet was unable to recall where he sensed this type of aura in the end. This aura was filled with gloominess and ruthlessness. Of course, Mo Xian had restrained it within his body, and it was difficult for an ordinary person to notice it. This Mo Xian probably has acquired some fortuitous encounter as well to possess his current cultivation, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Not to mention the Cloud Continent. Even if it was the entire Darkstone Empire and Darkhan Dynasty, they were all only a remote little kingdom. An existence like this appearing in a remote little kingdom was an extremely shocking thing by itself. If Mo Xian didn't acquire fortuitous encounters, then it was practically impossible. He's Mo Xian, the #1 expert in the younger generation of the Darkstone Empire. He really does deserve his reputation. Third level of the void initiation stage. Mo Xian isn't 35 yet, right? No matter if it was the representatives of the various powers and imperial kingdoms on the high platform, or the group of young geniuses below the platform, everyone sighed emotionally. Vast origin energy was like a ball of flames on Mo Xian's body as it enveloped him within. Whoosh! Right at this moment, strands of material violet-colored energy appeared on the origin energy on Mo Xian's body, and another 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above him. 7 ancient mammoth silhouettes spiraled downwards with imposing auras that shot into the sky like rainbows. Third-level lightning concept. Many people couldn't refrain from exclaiming in shock. Mo Xian, the #1 expert in the younger generation of Darkstone Empire, possessed a cultivation at the 3rd level of the void initiation stage and had comprehended 3rd-level lightning concept. Does any one of the 9 of you want to challenge me? Mo Xian stood in midair as he spoke slowly, and his cold voice carried along extreme overbearingness. For a time, the 9 combat ring masters on the combat rings looked at each other, and in the end, no one dared challenge Mo Xian. Challenging Mo Xian was simply courting death. Third level of the Void Initiation stage and third level Lightning concept was sufficient to make everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, go no further. Looks like the outcome is already decided. There's nothing exciting left to see. Mo Xian is too strong, and he's utterly not on the same level as the other 9 combat ring masters. The other 9 great combat ring masters don't even have the courage to fight him. Third level Void Initiation stage, third level Lightning concept. Mo Xian's strength can even compare with the experts from the older generation. Many people from the surrounding crowd were slightly disappointed. Mo Xian had revealed such a formidable strength, so the honor of being the number 1 young genius in the empire undoubtedly belonged to him. Duan Ling Tian, you aren't challenging Mo Xian as well. Zhongnan looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked via voice transmission. Even when he recalled it now, he still felt a lingering fear in his heart towards Duan Ling Tian's ability. At that moment, his life seemed to be completely controlled in the hands of Duan Ling Tian, and it was at the mercy of Duan Ling Tian. He didn't doubt it in the slightest that if Duan Ling Tian wanted his life at that moment, then he would die for sure. Duan Ling Tian smiled bitterly when he heard Zhongnan challenge Mo Xian. Not to mention Mo Xian himself was in existence at the third level of the Void Initiation stage, and it was far from something the soul skill, Thousand Illusion, that he executed with his spiritual force was able to effect. Even Mo Xian's third level Lightning concept was sufficient to easily obliterate the illusory space constructed by his soul skill. His soul skill, Thousand Illusions, had numerous restrictions, and it wasn't all-powerful. It was completely useless before Mo Xian. I'm not a match for him. Duan Ling Tian lightly shook his head as he replied via voice transmission. Zhongnan came to a sudden understanding. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian's gaze descended onto the origin energy on Mo Xian's body. More precisely speaking, he was staring with concentration at the violet-colored energy contained in Mo Xian's origin energy, his lightning concept. The third-level lightning concept caused the lightning energy to possess bolts of lightning leaping about within it, and if one didn't observe carefully, it would be impossible to notice. Lightning. Unknowingly, Duan Ling Tian was entranced, and his entire body and soul was immersed within Mo Xian's lightning concept. At this moment, he seemed to have pulled open the layer upon layer of mist to discover the profundity of lightning by a step further. So that's how it is. In the end, Duan Ling Tian returned to his senses, and a smile appeared on his face. They all say that experience is the best teacher, and the facts are really like this. With my experience today, I have a new comprehension towards lightning, and my Tempest Point will surely be able to achieve the perfection stage in a short amount of time. Duan Ling Tian was extremely confident towards this. If he wanted to achieve the perfection stage in Tempest Point, then he must first comprehend advanced lightning force. Along with the appearance of Mo Xian, the young genius competition of Darkstone Empire was approaching its end. Mo Xian had deterred everyone with his third-level Void Initiation stage cultivation and third-level lightning concept, and he caused all the 9 young geniuses on the 9 combat rings to not dare challenge him. Since it's like this, then the young genius competition this time has come to an end. The number 1 young genius of Darkstone Empire is Mo Xian. King Yong stood up once more, and his voice was like explosive thunder as it spread out into the distance. The other 9 great combat ring masters will obtain the qualifications to head to the Darkhan dynasty and participate in the competition for the positions in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. All 9 of you and Mo Xian gather at the Imperial Palace 3 days from now. At that time, the Imperial family will bestow all of you with rewards. King Yong finished speaking in one go. Subsequently, King Yong once again ascended the palanquin, and then the 8 void prying stage martial artists carried up the palanquin and escorted King Yong to leave. Long live King Yong. The people present spoke respectfully, and they sent off King Yong with their gazes until his palanquin vanished behind the clouds and mist in the horizon. The young genius competition had come to a close at this point. Humph. On the high platform, the representative of the Bazo Imperial Kingdom, Wei Kuan, snorted coldly before leaving with the other representatives. This time, their Bazo Imperial Kingdom could be said to be unique. They were the only Imperial Kingdom present where all 5 young geniuses had fallen in battle. Qi Ming, our Bazo Imperial Kingdom will remember what happened today. Before he left, Wei Kuan didn't forget to threaten Qi Ming. Do as you wish. Qi Ming didn't take Wei Kuan's words seriously. Meanwhile, the black-clothed of Emo Xian who was high above in the air fluttered, and he intended to leave. Emo Xian. Duan Ling Tian looked at Emo Xian and sent a voice transmission. Instantly, Emo Xian's figure stopped moving, and his eyes that were dim and devoid of light flanked indifferently at Duan Ling Tian before he asked via voice transmission, "Do you need something?" Emo Xian's tone contained slight impatience. "I want to make a trade with you." Duan Ling Tian went straight to the point. "Trade?" Emo Xian was stunned before asking via voice transmission. "Void fuse fruit." "You know?" Duan Ling Tian was surprised, as he never expected Emo Xian would be able to guess his intentions. "Humph." Emo Xian grunted coldly. "There were no less than 20 people before you that were interested in that void fuse fruit. But the things they gave weren't enough to arouse my interest." Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. Right, it was common knowledge that the void fuse fruit was useless to Emo Xian. Because of that, there was surely many people that wanted to trade for it and obtain the void fuse fruit from Emo Xian. Obviously, no one was able to pay a price that could arouse Emo Xian's interest. The void fuse fruit is indeed not of any great use to me. But if you're unable to take out something that's able to arouse my interest, then I rather the void fuse fruit decay in my hand than give it to anyone. Emo Xian spoke indifferently. Duan Ling Tian smiled confidently, and he spoke straightforwardly. "Grade 4 spirit weapon. How about it?" "Grade 4 spirit weapon?" Emo Xian's pupils constricted when he heard Duan Ling Tian, and he glanced at Duan Ling Tian with slight astonishment before saying, "You have a grade 4 spirit weapon? I can provide a grade 4 spirit sword that provides an amplification of 58% in exchange for the void fuse fruit in your possession. How about it?" Duan Ling Tian asked directly. "Are you sure you want to use a grade 4 spirit sword to exchange for the void fuse fruit?" Even though Emo Xian's voice transmission was still calm, Duan Ling Tian was able to sense traces of excitement. Obviously, Emo Xian's interest had been aroused. "Yes. Are you willing?" Duan Ling Tian nodded. "All right. 3 days from now, if you're able to produce a grade 4 spirit sword to exchange with me, then I'll give you the void fuse fruit." Emo Xian agreed. To Emo Xian, his strength and natural talent wasn't inferior to the numerous young geniuses of the Darkhan dynasty. But those extremely outstanding young geniuses in the Darkhan dynasty more or less possessed a grade 4 spirit weapon to rely on, whereas he didn't. If he were to go against those young geniuses from Darkhan dynasty, then he would undoubtedly suffer a loss from this. So he'd already wanted to obtain a grade 4 spirit weapon. Unfortunately, even in the entire Darkstone Empire, there was only a single grade 4 spirit weapon, and it was possessed by the imperial family. Supposedly, it was in King Yang's possession. Now, he had the opportunity to obtain a grade 4 spirit weapon, and it was even exchanged for with that void fuse fruit, so he naturally wouldn't refuse. After he glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian, Emo Xian transformed into a black bolt of lightning that vanished before the eyes of everyone. Meanwhile, the young geniuses on the 9 combat rings walked off the combat rings. Duan Ling Tian, Su Li, congratulations. Luo Zhan and Chen Xiao Shui congratulated Duan Ling Tian and Su Li. Duan Ling Tian replied with a light smile, whereas Su Li instead sighed. "I heard long ago that the #1 young expert in the Darkstone Empire possessed an extremely extraordinary strength. Now that I've seen him today, he really does deserve his reputation." Obviously, Su Li was speaking of Emo Xian. "Su Li, there's another 2 more years to the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. At that time, you might not be unable to surpass him." Duan Ling Tian glanced at Su Li with a deeply meaningful gaze, and then he smiled. Su Li shook his head and smiled when he discerned the meaning contained in Duan Ling Tian's gaze. He was naturally able to discern that there was meaning concealed within Duan Ling Tian's words, but he was confident in being able to chase up to Mo Xian in another 2 years. You two are both freaks. Chen Xiao Shui rolled his eyes at Su Li and Duan Ling Tian, and then he sighed. I and Luo Zhan have already decided that after we leave the Darkstone Empire's Imperial City this time, we won't return to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom first, but instead go wander about for some time. Yes, Luo Zhan nodded, and his eyes were filled with yearning. Perhaps we'll be able to obtain good fortune that belongs to us. Otherwise, if we continue to stay within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and shut ourselves out from the outside world, then it's bound to be impossible for us to chase up to the two of you in our entire lifetimes. Luo Zhan and Chen Xiao Shui making such a decision had exceeded Duan Ling Tian's expectations. But Duan Ling Tian supported them. If flowers within a greenhouse don't experience that battering of the wind and rain, then its accomplishments were bound to be limited. This was something that he felt deeply about. I'm slightly anticipating the scene when I see both of you in the future. Duan Ling Tian smiled. Duan Ling Tian. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian heard Qi Ming's voice. Subsequently, he saw Prince Sheng and Qi Ming coming over side by side. Vice Dean Qi Ming. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled to Qi Ming. As for Prince Sheng, Duan Ling Tian directly disregarded him. Duan Ling Tian, Prince Sheng has something he wants to tell you. Qi Ming lightly smiled as he spoke. Duan Ling Tian was stunned, and then he looked at Prince Sheng. Duan Ling Tian. Prince Sheng looked at Duan Ling Tian with a flickering gaze, and then he took a deep breath before saying, in the past, there were perhaps some misunderstandings between the two of us. I hope that after this, we can write off the matters between the two of us and completely let bygones be bygones. How about it? Prince Sheng's words were spoken with an extremely depressed feeling. Although not much sincerity could be perceived from it, Duan Ling Tian still couldn't help but be shocked. Who was Prince Sheng? The brother of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's emperor, the owner of the Prince Sheng's estate, and he was also in existence at the Void Initiation stage. Now such an existence had given in before him? Duan Ling Tian. Prince Sheng is extremely sincere. When he saw Duan Ling Tian seeming to be slightly hesitant, Qi Ming interrupted. Duan Ling Tian smiled lightly. Since Vice Dean Qi has spoke out as well, then I naturally have no objections towards this matter. Prince Sheng, all the matters between the two of us are written off at this moment. Duan Ling Tian said to Prince Sheng right after he finished speaking to Qi Ming. He and Prince Sheng couldn't be considered to possess any deep or great enmity. So since Qi Ming had spoken on Prince Sheng's behalf, he had no choice but to give Qi Ming face. Of course, if Prince Sheng was only deceiving him for a time and did anything that was harmful to him in the future, then he would absolutely not show mercy. Prince Sheng nodded, and he heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy weight was lifted off his shoulder. Duan Ling Tian's advancement gave him too great pressure. So after considering it for a while, he still chose to put down his dignity and take the initiative to seek for peace with Duan Ling Tian. Otherwise, in the near future, he and the Prince Sheng's estate would probably completely vanish from this world. This was something that he had a strong premonition of. Duan Ling Tian. Both of you ought to be the representatives of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, right? Su Li, Long Yun. Waves of clamorous voices sounded out in the surroundings of Duan Ling Tian's group. Only now did they notice that they'd been surrounded by many people. Duan Ling Tian's group hurriedly soared into the sky and left as if they were fleeing. I still have 3 days of time. I hope I can comprehend advanced lightning force in these 3 days. After he returned to the courtyard, Duan Ling Tian started cultivating to his utmost ability. At the rear courtyard, a row of wooden figures was placed there, and they were precisely provided for martial artists to use when cultivating. Now, Duan Ling Tian was standing before these wooden figures. Whoosh! With a raise of his hand, he pointed out, and his advanced wind force and half-step advanced lightning force swept out. As for origin energy, Duan Ling Tian had intentionally suppressed it. Otherwise, these wooden figures would directly be blasted into powder by him. On the first day, Duan Ling Tian carefully savored the things he comprehended from the third-level lightning concept on Mo Xian's body, yet he was unable to urge his lightning force to break through. On the second day, he was barely able to touch the threshold, yet he was still slightly lacking. On the third day, Duan Ling Tian smoothly broke through. Whirlwind. In the rear courtyard, Duan Ling Tian's movements were like the wind as he flashed out. Since he comprehended advanced wind force, the high-grade earth rank movement technique, Whirlwind, that he cultivated had smoothly stepped into the perfection stage. The speed of Whirlwind at the perfection stage was astonishing. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian suddenly raised his hand. Whoosh. He pointed out, then a strand of origin energy that had condensed into shape shot out, and it contained both advanced wind force and advanced lightning force within it. The Tempest Point energy easily entered one of the wooden figures in the rear courtyard, and it hit right on the head of the wooden figure. Bang! After the Tempest Point energy entered into it, it abruptly exploded. Starting from the head, the entire wooden figure transformed into powder. A wooden figure that was standing there just a moment ago had vanished at this moment. Tempest Point can be considered to have officially stepped into the perfection stage as well. Duan Ling Tian's face revealed a brilliant smile. Presently, the two types of force he'd comprehended had stepped into the advanced stage. To him, this was a great gain. I hope I can advance the two advanced forces into concept as soon as possible. At that time, when I utilize both my concepts, it would be the strength of two ancient horned dragons. When he thought up to here, Duan Ling Tian's heart couldn't help but surge. It was as if he'd already seen the scene of him executing the Tempest Point with wind concept and lightning concept. At dawn the next day, Duan Ling Tian, Su Li, and Long Yun bid their farewells to Qi Ming and the others. After that, the three of them left the courtyard together. Luo Zhan and Chun Xiao Shuai had complicated gazes as they looked at the figures of Duan Ling Tian's group of three that were disappearing into the distance. Only after the figures of Duan Ling Tian's group of three vanished before their eyes did Luo Zhan and Chun Xiao Shuai look at Qi Ming and say, "Vice Dean Qi, we won't be following you back. We intend to go wander about for some time by ourselves." Qi Ming nodded and didn't stop them, because he knew that it would be of no use even if he did. Sword Young Master and Crazy Young Master that stood before him had obviously already decided to leave, and he wasn't surprised by their reactions. After all, the numerous young experts that had appeared in the Darkstone Empire's Young Genius competition were truly too outstanding, and they surpassed Luo Zhan and Chun Xiao Shuai in every aspect. So Luo Zhan and Chun Xiao Shuai were surely feeling extreme pressure from it. Qi Ming looked at Luo Zhan and said, "Go. I'll help you notify Guild Master Luo." On the other side, Duan Ling Tian's group of three headed towards the Imperial Palace. Duan Ling Tian. On the way, Long Yun had suddenly looked towards Duan Ling Tian with an eye that contained traces of flickering bright light within it. "If you want to make a move against the Azure Forest Trisect in the future, then you must defeat me first." Duan Ling Tian was first stunned after he heard Long Yun, and then he said indifferently, "Is there a need? Is there a need?" Duan Ling Tian's indifferent words caused Long Yun's face to instantly flush red. "At any rate, I will absolutely not stand idly by if you make a move against the Azure Forest Trisect." Long Yun spoke with a deep voice. "Do as you please." Duan Ling Tian shrugged and had an indifferent expression. Humph. Su Li, who walked side by side with Duan Ling Tian and had always never spoken, grunted coldly, and he glanced indifferently at Long Yun. "Long Yun, you better not join in when Duan Ling Tian goes to take revenge for his sect. Otherwise, I won't stand idly by as well. Besides that, I won't let Master allow Martial Uncle Saber to interfere in this matter." Su Li's words were resolute and decisive, and it caused Long Yun to be flustered and exasperated. He really did have the intention of asking his master to protect the Azure Forest Trisect. But now, he was able to discern that Su Li was speaking seriously, and if Su Li's master really intended to stop his master, then his master would really have no way to help him. Moreover, after the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, it was still unknown if they would continue staying in the Darkhan dynasty or not. The entire journey continued without a single word spoken. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian's group of three had gathered with the other 6 people at the Imperial Palace of the Darkstone Empire. Duan Ling Tian. Zhongnan took the initiative to greet Duanling Tian, as he was extremely grateful towards Duanling Tian, showing mercy. Duanling Tian lightly smiled in reply and introduced Su Li to Zhongnan. Su Li, if I don't rely on the energy of the earth, I'm afraid it's difficult for me to defeat you, Zhongnan said to Su Li. You're being modest. Su Li shook his head. I'm speaking the truth. Concept is different from force. Only a force of nature is able to affect speed. Whereas in terms of concept, no matter if it was a natural concept or a weapon concept, both of them can affect speed. Zhongnan spoke earnestly. For example, sword cultivators like you. Some formidable sword cultivators are able to rely on their sword concept to even seem as if they'd transformed into swords as their bodies flashed out, and their speed is so fast that it's shocking. Right at this moment, a figure descended from the sky and attracted the attention of everyone. Emotian. Emotian still wore black clothes, and he stood alone in the distance like a lone wolf. Not long after, someone from the imperial palace made an appearance and led Duanling Tian's group of 9 into a place that was heavily guarded. This place was a pavilion, and guards could be seen standing every few steps apart. This cultivation of these guards. Duanling Tian's spiritual force stretched out, and he noticed a shocking thing. All these guards were actually existences at the void prying stage. What place is this? Duanling Tian was secretly shocked in his heart as he looked at the pavilion before him. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a figure descended from the sky. A middle-aged man in a white robe with gold edges and a mole between his brows stepped down from the sky, and 2 old men followed behind him like shadows. King Yong. Instantly, the young geniuses present bowed respectfully to King Yong, whereas Duanling Tian nodded to King Yong as well. Emotian. After King Yong descended before Duanling Tian and the others, he looked at Emotian who stood at the side by himself, and with a raise of his hand, his origin energy coiled around a thing before slowly pushing it to arrive before Emotian. This was a glittering and translucent spirit fruit that emitted a wave of a fragrant aroma, and the aroma caused one's mind to be unable to refrain from being slightly at ease. Void fuse fruit. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Instantly, many people looked with envy at the spirit fruit Emotian held in his hand. Duanling Tian stared at the void fuse fruit with a burning gaze. Have you prepared the thing? Under the gazes of everyone present, Emotian looked at Duanling Tian and asked indifferently. Duanling Tian nodded, and with a raise of his hand, a spatial ring shot out into Emotian's hand. Whoosh! Emotian raised his hand and passed over the void fuse fruit to Duanling Tian. This scene caused everyone, including King Yong, to be astonished. What did Duanling Tian use to exchange with Emotian? Emotian was actually willing to give away the void fuse fruit. Even though the void fuse fruit is useless to Emotian, but there seems to be not many things that can arouse Emotian's interest. Unbelievable. The people present were mostly curious about what Duanling Tian passed over to Emotian. After Duanling Tian received the void fuse fruit, under the numerous gazes of envy and jealousy, he directly shoved it into his mouth and swallowed it with a few gulps, whereas the medicinal strength of the void fuse fruit had been temporarily stored by him within his body, and he would arouse the medicinal strength when he cultivated. As expected of the void fuse fruit, its medicinal strength is really shocking. It's indeed comparable to the total of the void refining fruit and void reserve fruit. Duanling Tian felt the medicinal strength of the void fuse fruit, and he was shocked in his heart. I ought to be able to rely on this to break through to the 9th level of the void prying stage. I must break through to the void initiation stage before the dynasty martial competition begins in the Darkhan dynasty, and then get into contact with the other 8 possessors of the jade swords to enter the Sword Monarch's treasure vault. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed as he planned in his heart. If I want to become eminent in the dynasty martial competition, it would undoubtedly be wishful thinking if I don't possess a cultivation at the void initiation stage and above. Even if it's an ordinary void initiation stage martial artist, it might not be possible to become eminent and obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Duanling Tian thought to himself. Duan Ling Tian's goal was to stand out during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and obtain the favor of the powers from the foreign lands. He wanted to use the powers of the foreign lands as his stepping stone to think of a way to withdraw the great treasure left behind by the Rebirth Martial Emperor. After that, he would cultivate with great effort and possess the strength capable of moving unhindered through the entire foreign lands, and even become a supreme martial emperor that looked down on the world. There's also Ku Er and Little Fei. They're both in the foreign lands now. If I want to see them, then I must walk out of the Darkhan dynasty and head to the foreign lands. In the blink of an eye, a few years had passed, yet Duan Ling Tian missed his 2 fiancées even more. He was most concerned about if they were well now. Duan Ling Tian. A voice transmission sounded out by Duan Ling Tian's ears, and it shocked him back to his senses. What? Duan Ling Tian looked at Su Li. The earlier voice transmission was precisely sent into his ears by Su Li. Duan Ling Tian, what did you use to exchange for the void fuse fruit from Xian? Su Li asked curiously. Subsequently, he added, of course, if it's inconvenient for you, then just take it as if I never asked. There's nothing inconvenient about it. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and replied via voice transmission. Actually, it's nothing. I just took out a grade 4 spirit weapon and exchanged it for his void fuse fruit. Su Li was his friend, so a small matter like this was nothing to conceal. Grade 4 spirit weapon. Duan Ling Tian's casual way of saying it caused Su Li's pupils to be unable to refrain from constricting. You have a grade 4 spirit weapon. Su Li's voice transmission was filled with shock. Su Li, I'll gift you a grade 4 spirit sword before the dynasty martial competition, said Duan Ling Tian. Gift me? A grade 4 spirit sword. Su Li was shocked, and after staying silent for a while, he asked, Duan Ling Tian, you? Could it be that you know a grade 4 weapons craftsman? Kind of. Duan Ling Tian casually replied. Kind of. Su Li was stunned, and then he shook his head and said, I don't need you to gift a grade 4 spirit sword to me. I have one myself. But my master didn't allow me to use it before the selection during the dynasty martial competition. Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding, and he sighed to himself at the same time. It's so much different when you have a master from the foreign lands. A grade 4 spirit sword is easily obtained. In this way, that Long Yun should have a grade 4 spirit saber as well. Duan Ling Tian asked. It's not only a grade 4 spirit saber. According to my knowledge, he ought to even possess a grade 3 spirit saber in his possession. That spirit saber was prepared for him by his master to be used during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, said Su Li. Grade 3 spirit saber? Duan Ling Tian was instantly petrified, and he only asked after a short moment. So in this way, you have a grade 3 spirit sword in your possession as well? Yes. Su Li lightly nodded. Comparisons are really odious. Duan Ling Tian laughed bitterly. He was at most able to produce a grade 4 spirit weapon now, yet he wasn't able to produce a grade 3 spirit weapon. After I consumed the void fuse fruit, it ought to not be a problem to break through to the 9th level of the void prying stage. Another step in improvement is the void initiation stage. So long as I break through to the void initiation stage and condense a grade 3 weapon flame, then I'll be able to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon. Duan Ling Tian felt at ease with a quick thought. Presumably, so long as he was able to gather the materials for a grade 3 spirit weapon before the dynasty martial competition, then he would be able to possess a grade 3 spirit weapon. Follow me. Meanwhile, King Yong spoke out, and he brought along Duan Ling Tian's group of 10 to head towards the pavilion ahead. Everywhere they passed, the guards that were guarding outside moved aside. Aren't you going to inspect it? Duan Ling Tian looked at Xian, who walked at the other side, and asked via voice transmission. Because he noticed that after he passed the spatial ring that contained the grade 4 spirit sword to Xian didn't withdraw it from the spatial ring to confirm it was a grade 4 spirit sword. Is there a need? Xian replied with a question. Duan Ling Tian's face froze, and then he glanced deeply at Xian as the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl into an arc. This Xian is slightly interesting. The grade 4 spirit sword Duan Ling Tian used to exchange for the void fuse fruit was precisely the spirit sword given to him by the pavilion master of the Dark Han Dynasty's Milky Way City's treasure-gathering pavilion. King Yong, this place is? Duan Ling Tian's group of 10 followed behind King Yong to arrive before the pavilion, and one of them couldn't refrain from asking. This is the treasure vault of our Darkstone Empire's imperial family. Within it is numerous valuable materials and some medicinal pills and spirit weapons. King Yong spoke slowly. Spirit weapons? The gazes of many people lit up. Are there grade 4 spirit weapons? King Yong shook his head. There are only grade 5 spirit weapons. Instantly, many people present were slightly flagging with interest. But there were a few people that were very interested. Although they had grade 5 spirit weapons in their possessions, it was temporarily lent to them by their respective powers backing them. Once they were eliminated in the Dynasty Martial competition, then they'd have to hand it in once they returned. If they were able to obtain a grade 5 spirit weapon now, then it would undoubtedly be a good thing for them. Of course, there were also those like Duan Ling Tian and Su Li who possessed a grade 5 spirit weapon that belonged to themselves. These people weren't really interested towards grade 5 spirit weapons. The treasure vault of the Darkstone Empire ought to have some good things. In next to no time, the gazes of those people that possessed their own grade 5 spirit weapons lit up, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Remember that all of you are only allowed to select one treasure from within. If there's someone who's greedy, then they'll bleed on the edge of a sword. One of the old men behind King Yong swept Duan Ling Tian's group of 10 with a fierce gaze as he spoke in a low voice. Duan Ling Tian's group nodded. What a joke. Stealing treasures under the eyes of King Yong and 2 old fellows that seemed to be at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage? Wasn't that courting death? Rumble, rumble. Finally, the gate to the Darkstone Empire's treasure vault was opened. The scene that entered their eyes was a glitter of gold and jade, and it caused the eyes of Duan Ling Tian and the others to be dazzled. Right when King Yong was intending to bring Duan Ling Tian and the others in. Wait! A voice that was moving like the chirping of an oriole suddenly sounded out from the horizon. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian and the others couldn't help but turn around. A yellow-colored figure was like a bolt of lightning as it descended from high above in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, the figure had descended before Duan Ling Tian and the others. A beautiful yellow-clothed young girl appeared before their eyes, and even the guards that came over after hearing the sounds over here couldn't help but be stunned. This person that descended from the sky is actually a young girl? Based on this young girl's appearance, she's at most at the age of 15 or 16. A 15 or 16-year-old void prying stage martial artist. The group of guards felt their scalps go numb. Actually, it wasn't just them. Even King Yong, the 2 old men behind him, and the group of young geniuses were dumbstruck. Compared to this yellow-clothed young girl before them, they felt that they'd lived all these years in vain. When they were at this age, it was already not bad if they had a cultivation at the origin core stage. Watch out! Right at this moment, King Yong seemed to have noticed something, and his face went grim as he shouted out. Swish! Swish! At the same time, a black and a white bolt of lightning shot towards Duan Ling Tian at an extremely swift speed. Amongst the people present, only King Yong, the 2 old men behind him, Mo Xian, and He Long were able to see the path their 2 bolts of lightning flashed on. Hiss hiss, in next to no time, they saw a scene that shocked them. They saw that a little python had appeared on each of Duan Ling Tian's shoulders. The 2 little pythons were black and white respectively, and they were utterly unable to discern what type of pythons these were. Presently, the 2 little pythons were flicking their tongues as they licked Duan Ling Tian's face happily. Little black, little white. Duan Ling Tian recovered from the shock of seeing the yellow-clothed young girl appear as well, and then he stretched out his hand to grab the 2 little pythons in his hand before lightly smiling and sizing them up. Big brother Ling Tian. Meanwhile, the yellow-clothed young girl that stood at the side looked at Duan Ling Tian. Xuanai. Duan Ling Tian looked at the young girl, and he had a slightly pleasantly surprised expression. How did all of you know I was here? The yellow-clothed young girl before him was none other than Han Xuanai, who took the 2 little pythons away all those years ago. Big brother Ling Tian. I, little black, and little white went back to that cave to look for you. But unexpectedly, you'd already left. So, we went looking for you all the way until here. Han Shui lightly smiled as she said, I heard that you came to this Darkstone Empire to participate in some young genius competition. It's already over. Duan Ling Tian nodded. It's over. Han Shui drooped her little head, and she was slightly dispirited, and then she seemed to have thought of something and asked, Then what are all of you doing here now? This is the Darkstone Empire's Imperial Family's treasure vault, and we're about to enter to take our rewards from the Young Genius competition this time. We're allowed to choose one treasure each, said Duan Ling Tian. Treasure? Can I go in and choose with you? Han Shui-Nai's eyes glowed as she'd become interested. This? You have to ask King Yong. Duan Ling Tian looked at King Yong with an embarrassed expression, and then he sent a voice transmission with a slightly perturbed feeling in his heart. King Yong, she's a young girl and doesn't know any better, don't. Duan Ling Tian hadn't even finished speaking his words of remedy when Han Shui-Nai had already walked to arrive before King Yong, and she wasn't afraid in the slightest when facing King Yong, who had a solemn expression. Whoosh! Han Shui-Nai soared into the sky and stretched out her white wrist to lightly pat King Yong. Uncle Red Mole, I want to go in and choose treasures with Big Brother Ling Tian as well. Is that all right? Shui-Nai. Never had Duan Ling Tian imagined that Han Shui-Nai would do such an insane action, and he instantly felt his scalp go numb. Uncle Red Mole. The others were dumbstruck when they heard Han Shui-Nai, and this included King Yong and the two old men behind him. Subsequently, the crowd of people glanced at Han Shui-Nai with a gaze of pity. As far as they were concerned, although this young girl was beautiful in appearance and possessed natural talent in the martial Tao that was extraordinary. But joking without respect to the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire, King Yong, would probably cause her to lose her life. King Yong, Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, and he wanted to plead for mercy on Han Shui-Nai's behalf. Of course you can. King Yong spoke, interrupting Duan Ling Tian and causing him to be flabbergasted. He saw King Yong look at Han Shui-Nai with a genial expression and a smile on his face. Little girl, since you're interested in the treasure vault of our Darkstone Empire's imperial family, then go in with them. You can choose all of the treasures within. Take whatever you want. Thank you, Uncle Red Mole. Han Shui-Nai's eyes lit up before her figure flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a gust of wind that dashed into the treasure vault. At this moment, she'd tossed Duan Ling Tian to the back of her head. Outside the treasure vault, everyone including Duan Ling Tian was dumbstruck, and all of them looked at King Yong in disbelief. King Yong is so amiable. Duan Ling Tian and some of the people that weren't so familiar with King Yong thought in their hearts. Only some of the people who'd heard of King Yong's deed had expressions of disbelief. King Yong was actually so courteous to that young girl. Could it be that she has some great background? At this moment, even the two old men behind King Yong thought in this way. All of you go in. King Yong restrained the smile on his face and recovered his expressionless face before speaking indifferently to Duan Ling Tian and the others. Duan Ling Tian and the others instantly entered the treasure vault. King Yong. Meanwhile, the two old men behind King Yong looked at King Yong at the same time with bewildered expressions. Revered elders, I know what the two of you want to ask. We can't afford to offend this young girl. King Yong sighed, and slight terror appeared deep within his eyes. The two old men were instantly petrified when they heard this. Can't afford to offend? King Yong said such words? In next to no time, they thought of the accomplishments that the young girl had achieved at such an age, and they couldn't help but come to a sudden understanding. Perhaps this young girl is the daughter of the higher-ups from one of the top powers in the Dark Han dynasty. Duan Ling Tian followed the group of people to enter the treasure vault. But in his heart, he constantly carried traces of bewilderment. The change in King Yong's attitude was too strange. Could it be that Shui-Nai used a voice transmission earlier to tell King Yong of her background? In the end, Duan Ling Tian could only think in this way. According to his knowledge, the yellow-clothed young girl, Han Shui-Nai, was from the foreign lands. According to his guesses, there was an enormous power behind Shui-Nai. Otherwise, how could they possibly assist her to possess this cultivation at such a young age? Wait. Duan Ling Tian seemed to have thought of something, and his face changed into an expression of shock. How did I not notice earlier? Xuanai's current appearance seems to be completely the same as 1 year ago. There was utterly no change. Logically speaking, she's at least over 20 years old now. Yet her appearance is still like a young girl around the age of 15 or 16, and she's just like a little child that can't grow up. Duan Ling Tian's heart shook when he thought up to here. The Maiden of Heavenly Mountain. At the first possible moment, a terrifying thought emerged in Duan Ling Tian's heart. He still remembered that in the earth of his previous life, there was a famous wuxia novel that had an existence that was called the Maiden of Heavenly Mountain. 1. That maiden had an age over 100, yet had the appearance of a young girl. Could it be that Xuanai is a 100-plus-year-old old demon? Old monster. Duan Ling Tian's heart trembled as he felt a chill run down his spine. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian looked at Han Xuanai, who was leafing through the entire treasure vault, and then his spiritual force silently stretched out with an intention of discovering Han Xuanai's cultivation. Unfortunately, his spiritual force had only just arrived a meter away from Han Xuanai when it was like a stone that sank into the sea, and there was no response from it any longer. It seems as if there's some sort of energy that's stopping me from detecting Xuanai's cultivation. Yet this feeling is completely different from when I use my spiritual force on a void interpretation stage expert like King Yong. Duan Ling Tian suddenly felt that this yellow-clothed young girl of unknown background had an identity that was more and more mysterious. Hiss hiss, right at this moment. The sounds of the two little pythons flicking their tongues sounded out by Duan Ling Tian's ear once again. Right? How could I have forgotten the two of you? Duan Ling Tian looked at the two little pythons and sent a voice transmission into their ears. Little black, little white. Both of you ought to be able to communicate with me via voice transmission, right? If you two are unable to do that, then both of you will be even inferior to Little Gold. Instantly, Big Brother, we're much more formidable than her. We were able to communicate with Big Sister Xuanai using voice transmission since we were at the void prying stage. Exactly. Big Brother, we're extremely formidable. Two anxious and immature voice transmissions entered into Duan Ling Tian's ears at the same time. The first voice transmission was like the voice of a young boy, whereas the second voice transmission was instead like the voice of a young girl. 1. TL note. It comes from this book https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/demi-gods_and_semi-devils.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.